The lash cut through the still air like a violent crack of thunder before biting into flesh. The barn echoed with the sharp report, a sound that blended with the muffled groan Rosa tried to keep trapped between her clenched teeth. Her wrists strained against the rope that held her to the rough wooden post, trembling but refusing to surrender. She didn't weep. She never did. Tears only made Mauricio angrier, and when he saw them, his arm swung harder. "Useless wretch." His voice tore through the silence like shattered glass. "Can't even carry a bucket of water without spilling it. What good is a cripple like you?" Rosa shut her eyes tight and began to count. 1, 2, 3. The pain never changed, but she had discovered a way to make her mind drift far away. Numbers became her escape, guiding her thoughts to wildflower fields that bloomed without permission, to wide skies where birds flew without ever glancing back. That was when she heard it, the sound of hooves, heavy, steady, growing closer. Mauricio froze mid-strike, the whip still raised, his face tightening. Rosa turned her head slightly, catching sight of a tall figure through the gap in the barn door. The fading sunlight painted his silhouette in gold, a man on horseback, dressed in shadows, his wide-brimmed hat casting half his face in mystery. Mauricio. The stranger's voice was deep, calm, and heavy enough to weigh down the air. Mauricio's grip tightened around the whip. "Jonah," he spat, "what brings you to my land?" The rider dismounted with unhurried grace, like a man who knew the strength of his body down to every movement. His gaze swept across the barn, lingering on Rosa long enough to make her chest tighten, before locking back on Mauricio. "I heard you had a daughter." "I do." Mauricio spat on the dirt. "But she's nothing worth talking about. Crippled, worthless, a burden I've been stuck with all these years." Heat flushed through Rosa's veins, not from the welts on her back, but from the sting of humiliation that had burned inside her since birth. Since her crooked left leg marked her as defective, since her mother died delivering her, leaving only a broken child as a reminder of Mauricio's failure. "Sell her to me," Jonah said. His words dropped like stones into the silence. "I need a woman." The stillness that followed was suffocating. Rosa could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Mauricio barked a sharp, humorless laugh. "You must be mad. That one can't even scrub a floor properly and you want her as a wife?" "I didn't ask if she was useful." Jonah's voice didn't rise, but it cut through the room. "I asked how much." Rosa opened her eyes and studied him carefully. There was something in the way he stood, something that didn't belong to a man bartering for livestock. He wasn't assessing her the way other men had, with cold eyes searching for flaws to confirm her worthlessness. His presence carried something different, something Rosa had never seen directed at her before. Mauricio scratched at his greasy beard, greed flickering in his eyes. 50. The speed of Jonah's reply startled him. "Done." Mauricio blinked. He had expected haggling, excuses, some performance of persuasion, but Jonah was already reaching for his coins. "And I'll take her now," Jonah added. "Cut the ropes." The world seemed to tilt beneath Rosa. For 20 years, no one had spoken of her as though she had any value. No one had ever demanded she be treated with even a shred of dignity. And now this stranger was here, paying as if she were something rare. Mauricio, eager to pocket the silver, slashed the ropes free. Rosa rubbed her raw wrists, dazed. She was being sold like livestock, like property. Yet when Jonah approached her, he didn't order her to follow, didn't drag her by force. He simply extended his hand, an invitation, not a command. "Can you ride?" he asked. It was the first time in her life someone had asked about what she could do instead of what she couldn't. Rosa swallowed, her throat tight. "Yes," she whispered. She had always been able to. Her twisted leg never kept her from holding balance in a saddle. "Then come." She took his hand and rose. For a brief instant their eyes met, and in Jonah's gaze she found no pity, no hunger, no contempt, only respect. Mauricio was already counting his silver, smirking. "Good luck, Jonah. You'll need it." Jonah helped Rosa onto the horse with care, settling her behind him. As they rode away, he leaned close enough that only she could hear. "No one will ever raise a hand to you again." The wind whipped against her face as the horse surged forward. Behind her, the only life she had known slipped into the distance. For the first time in 20 years, Rosa wasn't escaping through numbers. She wasn't sending her mind somewhere far away. She was present, alive, tasting freedom in the wind and the rhythm of the gallop, and she couldn't help but wonder, had she truly been rescued or merely traded one cage for another? The storm rolled in on a muted Tuesday morning, only 3 weeks after Rosa and Jonah had sealed their vows in a quiet ceremony, with nothing more than the presence of a justice of the peace. They were sharing a modest breakfast, steam rising from chipped porcelain cups, when the sound reached them, hoofbeats, not of a lone rider, but of several horses pressing hard against the earth. Rosa froze, the warmth draining from her body as a familiar, venomous laugh drifted across the valley. She didn't need to see him to know. Mauricio had returned, and this time he wasn't alone. "Stay inside," Jonah said, pushing back his chair with urgency. "No." Rosa rose as well, her hands steady despite the terror clawing at her throat. She touched his arm firmly. "I won't hide from him, Jonah. If I run now, I'll be running for the rest of my life. I am not the broken girl he used to beat." Jonah studied her for a heartbeat, then gave a small nod. "Then we face him together." Hand in hand, they stepped outside. Mauricio sat high on a buckskin horse in the center of the yard, flanked by 2 strangers. One bore the badge of law, the other had the posture of a man who thrived on violence. "Well, well," Mauricio drawled, his tone dripping with false sweetness. "Look at you, little Rosa, all grown up, married even. What do you want, Mauricio?" Jonah's voice was calm, though Rosa could feel the tension in him like a drawn bowstring. "To see if my daughter's still breathing. A father's got a right to worry about his child, don't you think?" His grin revealed yellowed teeth. "Especially after I've heard whispers she's not being properly taken care of." "I'm well taken care of," Rosa said, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. Mauricio ignored her entirely, keeping his eyes on Jonah. "You know, 50 was too little for her. Now that she's married, her price has gone up. I'd say 200. "She isn't for sale," Jonah said evenly. "Everything's for sale if the offer is right." The man with the badge stepped forward. "I'm Sheriff Morrison. I've received a formal complaint that this woman is being kept here against her will." Rosa gave a harsh laugh. "Against my will? That's his story?" "Her father claims she was coerced, that she lacks the mental capacity to consent to marriage," Morrison said, pulling a folded paper from his coat. "By court order, she is to be returned to her father's custody until an inquiry is made." The world tilted beneath Rosa. She stared at the badge, the paper, and then at Mauricio's smug smile. Law, the cursed law that never protected women, only chained them. "Mental capacity?" she spat, stepping forward despite Jonah's low warning. "I can read. I can write. I know Latin. I do arithmetic better than most men in this town. And I know exactly why you're here." Mauricio drank away the silver he earned selling me, and now he wants more. The silent brute at Mauricio's side finally stepped forward. "Enough. There's an order, and we're here to enforce it." Jonah moved, not with noise or theatrics, but with precision, placing himself between Rosa and the 3 men. His stillness carried its own menace. "Does the lady wish to speak for herself?" he asked, eyes never leaving the intruders. Rosa stared at Mauricio, the man who had turned her first 2 decades into nothing but a gauntlet of survival, who had sold her for 50 coins, who now returned like a vulture circling for more flesh. "Yes," she said, her voice carrying across the valley like the strike of a bell. "I say you sold me as livestock, but I became soil, and soil grows stronger when it is broken. I belong to no one, not even myself, because now I belong to us." She squeezed Jonah's hand. Mauricio spat at the ground. "You were a disgrace from the start. Born crippled, killed your mother with your cursed birth. You should never have drawn breath." The words landed like lashes, but Rosa didn't falter. "Shame isn't being born different. Shame is a man who breaks his child because he cannot love what God gave him. Shame is selling your blood because you'd rather drink than care." Mauricio laughed, bitter and cruel. Love? Who could love a useless cripple? I do, Jonah said sharply, his voice slicing the air. I love every scar you left on her because each one proves she's stronger than you'll ever be. Sheriff Morrison cleared his throat, visibly uneasy. Look, I didn't come here for a family squabble. I have an order. I have to follow it. Then take me, Rosa snapped. But know this, if Mauricio raises his hand to me again, I will kill him. The silence was absolute. Even the birds stilled. She threatens her own father, the brute said with a nervous laugh. Proof she's mad. No, Jonah replied, his tone deadly quiet. That's proof she intends to live. And then Rosa felt it, the shift in him. The gentle teacher, the quiet farmer, gone. In his place stood the soldier who had survived war and torture. Gentlemen, Jonah said, his voice low and dangerous. You have 10 seconds to leave my land, or I will show you why I chose this valley for my home. You're threatening a sheriff? Morrison tried to sound authoritative, but his voice cracked. I'm not threatening, Jonah replied. I'm promising. He stepped forward. 9. Mauricio let out a strained laugh. You won't do anything, you're too civilized. 8. Jonah said, his hand brushing the weapon at his side. I'm civilized enough not to kill for pleasure, but for her, he glanced at Rosa. For her, I would do anything. For the first time, Rosa saw it, the flicker of fear in Mauricio's eyes. Not fear of her, but fear of the man who would fight for her without hesitation. 7. The brute tugged at his reins. Morrison faltered, staring at his badge as if it might lend him courage. 6. This isn't finished, Mauricio barked, already edging toward his horse. She's still my daughter. I'll come back for her. 5. Let's go, Morrison muttered urgently. We'll handle this another way. 4. They mounted quickly, trying to mask their retreat with dignity. Mauricio cast one last look at Rosa, and in it she saw something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. You'll regret this, girl, he sneered. 3. Jonah counted. I've regretted plenty already, Rosa answered. Mostly that it took me 20 years to stop fearing you. 2. They rode off in a cloud of dust. Rosa watched the man who had haunted her nightmares disappear down the road. But she knew, men like Mauricio always returned. Jonah's voice broke the silence. Would you really have done it? Yes, he said without pause. And they both knew it was true. That night, Rosa couldn't sleep, not from fear, but from something entirely new. For the first time, someone had stood and fought for her. Someone had seen her as worth defending. And outside, keeping watch on the road, Jonah guarded not only against Mauricio, but against every ghost that still shadowed the woman he loved. Where did you learn to breathe like that? He asked. By counting, she answered softly, filling her lungs once more. Always counting. At first just to survive the pain. Now I count for other things too. That morning in the kitchen, Rosa set 2 plates on the table without thinking twice. It wasn't because Jonah had asked, he never did, but because she wanted to. The table, once a lonely spot where she ate in silence while he kept his distance, had become the heart of their home, a place for shared meals, quiet plans, conversations about books, and silences that no longer felt heavy but safe. You've changed, Jonah told her one evening. In what way? She asked, tilting her head. You fill the room now. Before you tried to disappear. Now, you exist. Rosa thought about that. Perhaps she had always existed but had never been allowed to show it. One September morning she painted a small wooden sign by hand, careful brushstrokes spelling out 2 words, Strong Earth. When Jonah asked what it meant, she pointed, at the spiral garden, at the curtains she had sewn for the windows, at the house that finally felt like theirs. It means these roots will last, she said. It means I am no longer the broken girl he tried to destroy. I am the woman I became. She hung the sign at the front gate, and when the morning wind made it sway, it whispered like a promise. Strong Earth, Jonah repeated, smiling. I like that. It's where we live now, Rosa replied. Not just your house or mine, ours. And it has a name. That night, while preparing supper, Rosa realized she was humming. A lullaby, one her mother had sung long ago before death. before darkness. She froze when she noticed, but Jonah, standing in the doorway, said, "Don't stop." "It's been so long since I sang," she admitted. "Why?" "Because Mauricio told me people like me had nothing worth celebrating." Her eyes scanned the kitchen, the herbs drying from the rafters, the iron pot seasoned to perfection, the clean dishes stacked neatly. Then she looked at Jonah, the man who had given her not only shelter, but permission to be herself. "Now," she whispered, "I have everything to celebrate." Her voice carried through the house, filling it with warmth, turning walls into home and land into refuge. But Rosa did not know Mauricio was coming back. Men like him never surrendered defeat. From here, the story continues with the summons, the trial, Rosa's discovery of her inheritance, the documents from other women, her powerful defense in court, and the transformation of her pain into leadership and justice. It follows through the final confrontation at Strong Earth, when Mauricio returned with violence, only to find a daughter no longer broken, but unshakable. It closes with Rosa's motherhood, the birth of her daughter Maria, and the legacy of Strong Earth, no longer just land, but a symbol that scars can turn into strength, and strength can turn into freedom for many. Her story is not of vengeance, but of justice, not about perfection, but dignity, not about walking without a cane, but walking through life without shame. If you believe scars tell stories of survival, if you believe being different is not being defective, and if you believe love gives value where others see none, then you understand why the story of Rosa Santos Whitmore had to be told. And if her fight echoes your own, leave the words, Strong Earth, because real strength is not the absence of fear, but the choice to plant flowers even in fields of thorns. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. Every week we bring powerful stories of love, resilience, and survival. Tales that remind us that strength comes in many forms. Your subscription helps us keep sharing voices that inspire and stories that matter. So, if you believe scars can turn into strength, click subscribe now and join our growing community.